hip-hop and R&B, African, disco, oldies but goodies.
Hi, this is Janet Jackson.
We're bridging the gap. Seriously. Splash Radio 94.3 New Jersey.
Well, we're moving on now to the east side, to a deluxe apartment in the sky.
Hi, this is McBoomin Moving. Box truck for rent for all your light moving needs. Anywhere within the Northeast Orange, Irvington Orange areas. $50 a trip from Monday through Thursday. $60 from Friday through Sunday. Call 862-279-9300. That's 862-279-9300.
Oliver Samuels here, and I just want to invite you to come out to the People Profile Awards Sunday, June 18, 2017 at the Bailey Hall right up there in Fort Lauderdale. Guess what? Me will be the recipient of the prestigious Lifetime Awards. Don't take out one syllable of the meaning of the word prestigious. It's affair, nothing less. Yellow man get it last year, and that is a great achievement. Now me go be the recipient. I'm taking it to another level.
Know what I am doing? Downloading the Western Union app. I need to send money to my auntie in Nigeria. Know what I am doing now? Checking today's exchange rate to Nigeria on the Western Union app. Now I'm sending my auntie money to help her with her groceries.
Download the Western Union app today. Use it to check today's exchange rate and send money to loved ones in Nigeria. Western Union, moving money for better.
Western Union makes money from currency exchange. Carefully compare fees and exchange rates, which may vary and are subject to change. NMLS number 906983.
For the most authentic Caribbean food in town, check out Sunsplash Caribbean Bakery and Restaurant. They got the natural organic juice bar that'll get your day started right. Like the Power Punch, the Vegan Juice, the Mega Green, Roots like the Immortal and the Resurrection. And peep this, they have an extended bakery department that whips up my favorite, the Hot Hardo breads. White or wheat, that's your choice.
If you're feeling hungry, just grab a bite. At Sunsplash Bakery, the food is right. Jamaican patty, I tell our veggie. At Sunsplash Bakery, the food is right. Mix the peanut with the caramel porridge.
Serving breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They also cater to vegans and vegetarians with the Ital stew and the Ital aki, the soul jerk salmon and mango tilapia. And of course, they got the usual curry goat, oxtail, brown stew chicken, jerk chicken, and so much more. I mean, their menu is extended and they're highly rated. Your best bet is to just stop by or give them a call. They're open Monday through Wednesday, 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., Thursday through Saturday, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., and Sundays, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. They're located at 56 Main Street in Orange, New Jersey, and can be reached at 973-395-3777.
These days are some hungry days. We need some more food up on we empty plate. Long time we there and we sit on a wait. Sunsplash restaurant and run the place. Everybody me say just want a taste, yeah.
Let your food be a medicine. Eat well, live longer. I'm David Shepard, and I endorse this commercial.
Answer that, don't you? I bet it's killing you, seeing that soft glow just inches away. Hey, someone wants to tell you something, or maybe ask you something.
Ah, come on, answer it already. Just so we're clear, that wasn't my fault. Next time, ignore your inner thoughts. Don't text and drive. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Council and your friends here at Splash Radio.
Splash Radio 94.3, New Jersey, Rich.
Well, I don't know, so Mr. J represent for 94.3 FM Splash Radio. We just splash out the music on them.
I say you woke me up this morning.
Initialize sequence.
Your attention, please. This is no ordinary show. Covering news and information for Essex County, New Jersey, and beyond. This is the Eric Dawson Radio Show. Broadcasting from 94.3 Splash Radio. Now, here's your host, giving it to you like only he can. It's Eric Dawson.
Hey, this is Eric Dawson, and this is the Eric Dawson Radio Show, 94.3 FM. Caller number 973-457-8000. Again, it's 973-457-8000. If you're listening through your mobile device, 213-493-0287. And as always, we're streaming live from 10 to 12 every day, Monday through Friday. And today is Tuesday, and I'm here with my co-host, Rashon Hasan, former chairman of the Newark Board of Education. And, you know, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing well. Brother. You know, today's election day.
It is election day, man.
Very important day for our community. But overall, bro, I'm doing very well. Thank you for asking.
Well, you know, it is election day, and there's a program that comes on before we take the air. And for any of you guys who might be interested, tune in. She doesn't do Facebook Live. We're trying to get her on, but, you know, it's a spiritual show. Some of you guys might find some value in it. But what happened was, she and I had an opportunity to talk before, you and I got on air, Rashon, and she told me that she forgot it was election day. And she said not only did she forget it was election day, she said, I don't know who to vote for.
And you know, it's not hard to believe. You know, there's been, in my opinion, there's been very little interaction outside of individuals who are seeking a gubernatorial nomination for the Democratic Party and Republican parties throughout the state of New Jersey. You know, even in the city of Newark, I have yet to come across any of the elected officials who are on today's ballot and have any interaction with them. I haven't received any material from them. I think
you got nothing in the mail?
The first mailer that I got was I got a doorknob hanger that was put on my door in Society Hill about 2 days ago. That had a rundown of the Democratic Party from my ward. But outside of that, I hadn't really received any information via mail. I received a lot of information from Phil Murphy, through his mailing list. I've seen some signs up. Most of the signs that I've seen up in the communities are just those basic generic signs that say, vote line Democrats, and really doesn't, have much information about the candidates. I'm not sure what it's like in, other communities, but that's really what I've seen flooding the streets of Newark. I've also seen some comments on Facebook from some community members about those particular signs. One, that they violate city ordinances because they've been hung on street poles and utility poles throughout the city. And then the other piece is that it seems like, that's that old message that's, kind of dumbing down the community. It's not saying come out and vote for individuals because they're qualified or because they represent your best interest, but hey, just vote for them because they ended up on this line, and this is the line that the black people vote for, right?
Well, there are a couple things. So today is Education Day. So there are a couple things that I want to talk about. I sent you an email, and I apologize for sending it to you late. I don't know if you got a chance to look at it, but it actually was in a text, and it talked about how a school district is dealing with disciplinary issues based on them understanding, but they're trying to find alternative ways. So I want to talk about that a little bit. Also want to, if we can, address what the current president of the Newark Board of Education said. It was a comment that he made where he was quoted in a newspaper article and Tap Into, where he said, "It's time that a male take the lead, and not only a male but a father," noted Lewis. When he was selected by his colleagues to be board member. And my post, when I saw that, I said, Marquise Lewis is a misogynistic ass, and he has no respect for women. And there are people in there, and there was a comment most recently by a gentleman. He responded. He said that he didn't think that there was he said nothing wrong with asking more males, particularly black males, to take an interest in your children's education. I don't know that that's necessarily the issue, at least from me. And then there were several other people who weighed in, and some people in support of what he said, people not in support of what he said. But if you guys did not see that, I'm gonna share that post now, so you can go to the top of my Facebook page. But to me, it was a thought that made no sense. But I fear that we're going to experience that a lot this year. But if he believed that he was the most qualified person to lead, then just say that you're the most qualified person to lead. But simply to say that you should lead, not necessarily because you have any qualification outside of the fact that you're a male.
I think that I understand that definitely. As a former chairman of the board, I always thought that it was important to have a balance and have some fair representation. I don't think that there was a time when I served on the board that there was leadership that was completely male dominated, or if there was leadership that was completely dominated by females. There was always a balance, and I think a large part of that was because there needed to be that balance and that structure to show that in this community, men and women can serve as leaders and share that space together. I think for a long time in the political space, it's really been dominated by men, and we're still. That's what I was going to ask you. We're still having those conversations now where we're talking about the first, right? When it comes down to women in our community being able to hold political office and to excel in that arena. And it's 2017, so
please hold call.
2017, and I'm just surprised that we're still hearing the first when it comes to our women. And I do agree with every community member that it's definitely time for men to step up and be in these leadership roles. But quite honestly, when we look at the people who just made a mess of things, it really hasn't been the women, it's been the men. So I think when we have an opportunity, whether it's a male or female, to step up and exert their leadership capabilities and help us move in the right direction, then I'm all for it. However, a person's gender, I don't think that should even be mentioned, in the realm of a person's qualifications. When we're talking about the reasons why a person should be tapped to lead any organization, I think gender is the last thing that we should be considering. I think we should be focusing strictly on a person's skill sets, their qualifications, and then their ability to execute upon their vision to move the organization or the community forward.
I agree. Let's take this call. Hello, caller.
This is Jim Johnson. How are you?
Oh,
good morning.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well. Well, before we do this, I want to say, and I said this last night in a rant, Mr. Johnson, on my Facebook page, that I did, in fact, and I want to let everybody know, I did, in fact, reach out to all of the campaigns, every single one of them, Republican and Democrat, because of how important this election is. And the only one that responded was Jim Johnson. The only one. I want you guys to understand that. The only one that responded and thought that this platform was worth anything, that my listeners were worth anything, was Mr. Johnson. So I want to give you a special thank you for that, for my listeners as well. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing well. I've already had a great morning. Was able to go to the train station and greet voters who were very positive. Voted myself, and then took my mother to cast her ballot as well.
So, Mr. Johnson, I want to ask you a question, right? Because I've been posting like crazy today. We know that when it rains, they say when it rains, the weather is bad. There's usually a low voter turnout when it comes to Democrats. I've often talked about how I believe that party politics plays a role in suppressing the vote, especially in the black community, by not educating and informing folks. You know, I've encountered a couple people today who said, you know, I had no idea that there was an election today, that it's so quiet. And then I took the liberty, because in particular in Newark and East Orange, and I went on the Facebook pages of the elected officials, and I'm not even going to say I was surprised, but literally, when I went on at about 7:30 this morning, 8 o'clock this morning, they had been posting different things, but none of them, zero, posted anything about today's election.
Wow. That is, we are doing our part. We have been putting out GOTV messages, pushing out everywhere we can, including coming on platforms like yours to make sure that people know that this is a vital day and a very important thing that folks should do, which is vote. So it's surprising to me that there's been silence in other areas, but we need to lift that up, and it's important for you to really underscore to people how important it is to vote today.
And, you know, I was listening to a couple other radio stations on my way in, and they were interviewing folks on the, you know, at voting booths or voting polling places, and folks were saying that they knew very, very little about the candidates. And so I knew this from an article that I read in NJ.com, where they said there were still so many people who were undecided or unfamiliar, which is why I reached out to all of the campaigns to give them an opportunity on Election Day to introduce yourselves or reintroduce yourself to voters and tell them what you're about. Yep, go ahead, Mr. Johnson. So my hope is that you would no, that's okay. My hope is that you would do that now.
Oh, yes. Well, this is what I believe and what I'm running on. If we want real change in this state, and we need real change, we have to have real democracy. That means people getting out and vote. I am the only candidate to push for ethics reform so that we have people in government where service is the primary motive, and they understand that they are holding their positions in trust. I am taking on some of the hard issues that relate to inequality and economic opportunity for all the people in the state. When you look across the issues that are facing our urban areas and our suburban areas, there are some that are common. Our property taxes are having a devastating effect on particularly black and brown communities, with the high rate of foreclosure that we have in the country, rather in the state. It's the highest in the country. And you move through issue after issue, you see a series of failures that have hurt the people of the state, and we need leadership, and I intend to provide the leadership to turn that around.
So in our community, here are the issues as I see them. Taxes being one, education being another one, crime, right? Social justice. Speak to those issues and a Jim Johnson governor overseeing those things.
So let's start with the vision. The vision is this. If we want to have a stronger state, and if we want to have vibrant people, we have to have vibrant communities. What Martin Luther King used to talk about is beloved communities. And in those communities, the issues of access or fairness go hand in hand with success. You don't just want to have access, you want to have success as well, which means that economic opportunity has to be part of any governor's agenda moving forward in this state. On the access front, which is related to criminal justice and social justice reform, I have a decades-long record for pushing for criminal justice reform. If you go to my website, which is jimjohnsonforgovernor.com, you will find a 5-point plan for dealing with criminal justice issues. And it stems from a lot of the work that I've done in the state and across the country. So I was the chair of the Advisory Committee on Police Standards that looked at racial profiling by the state troopers. I helped bring police and communities together so that New Jersey became one of the first states with a statewide body cam plan. I have, when you go deeper on the social justice and opportunity front, my education program deals with some things that are critical for children across the state, and particularly young people in our urban areas. So I have fought for and will fight for universal pre-K. That's pre-K for all children. I think that it is critically important that we have after-school programs that are funded again, because the hours between 3 and 6 could be hours of real enrichment for our children, but they are also often hours of danger for our children. And so I've been pushing for that, and as well pushing to make college affordable. And that's on both the justice front, the fairness front, and the opportunity front. On the economic side, I believe that our living wage is $15 an hour, and that's what we should be pushing for, that women should be paid equal pay for equal work, which is not the law in the state right now, and that we ought to be in a position where there is paid family leave in case there is sickness in the family. We need these things and more. When I last was on, or maybe the time before that, we talked about infrastructure and inequality. Unless we make the right sort of infrastructure investments, we can have another generation or two that is struggling with inequality, because where we decide and how we decide to build our bridges has an impact on economic opportunity for different communities, and where and how many buses we provide for mass transit has an impact on the ability of people to get to good jobs and bring wealth back into communities. We need these things, and the next governor should have them in mind as he or she is pushing forward real change in the state.
So I have a question, and for all the listeners who just tuned in, we have gubernatorial candidate, Democrat Jim Johnson on the line. I have a Facebook question. It says, what will you do to help support minority businesses to ensure that they get their fair share of contracts?
One of the big things that I have pushed for and will push for is, from a state perspective, the end to the no-bid contract, where many of the opportunities for minority and women-owned businesses to compete are cut short because contracts have been let out and agreed upon even before folks know enough to make a proposal for the contract.
No. So listen, just push the button. Push the bottom one and then the top one again. Okay. So I'm sorry. Continue. I'm going to ask that caller to hold. Would you mind taking a call if this is a call for you?
Sure. Do you want me to finish this? But there are other things in terms of programs that can be enhanced for minority and women-owned businesses. And the third thing is this: the people who are running businesses, entrepreneurs, often have terrific ideas on how the government could be of better service, and we need to be in constant dialogue. So that I would want to have folks not only to be on the receiving end of government decisions, but involved in the decision-making process and the development of policy, so that we can all do better.
Excellent. All right, let's see if we can bring that caller on. Hello, caller.
Hi, this is William out of Orange.
Hi, William. You're on with gubernatorial candidate Democrat Jim Johnson.
Hi, Mr. Johnson. Good morning, and good luck.
Morning, William.
Good luck this afternoon for this election. I wanted to know your viewpoint in reference to two things: New Jersey Transit, and we know we have an issue in reference to the healthcare situation in our country right now. And our current governor, Governor Christie, in reference to the expansion of Medicaid for low-income people that don't have health insurance. What is your plans if you are elected or nominated today to be the gubernatorial candidate in reference to New Jersey Transit? Because I'm a commuter. And I understand at your platform, you are also a commuter, and we have a very drastic situation that's going to happen over the 6-week period, a reference to the Morris and Essex line. And what is your views on those two topics? And what are you planning to do if you are elected today to be the gubernatorial candidate in November?
Thank you for the call, William.
You raised two really important questions. I haven't been a commuter for a while because I've been running for governor, but my wife still commutes, and she not only often suffers with the delays, and our whole family does, because she can't get home and it affects family life, but she was one of the folks that missed the Hoboken crash by about a half an hour. Our transit assisted trains are among the most dangerous, the least safe in the country, and that has to change. As governor, I would look at not only improving the mass transit on the rails, but also improving service on the buses in terms of the expansion of lines, and the economics, I believe, could work because many of the bus lines pay for themselves. It is, as I mentioned before, on the issue of inequality, if you can't get to good jobs, it is very difficult to move up and provide opportunity for yourself and your family. And so we need to focus on that. Things are even tougher in the south part of the state. So that's one. And on the medical front, because of what's happening in Congress, we are going to have to seriously consider if they roll back the coverage under the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, we're going to have to consider moving to single payer. It would be tough because the monetary impact would be huge on our budgets. But health care is critical for all of us to be able to move forward.
We're going to see if we can quickly take this next call, and then go ahead, push that one, and then put them both on. Hello, caller.
Hey, how you doing? Hey, this Bennett Ellis from Eyes Wide Open Hope.
Hey.
I sent you a message, but I didn't know that we was just listening to on my dual phone from the other day. So now we just tuned into what you are doing today. We ride now up Springfield Avenue, and it says Line A, but it don't say, and it say Democrats, but it don't say who's running. So that might confuse some people.
All right. So right now you're on live with the gubernatorial candidate Democrat Jim Johnson. He's on the line. Do you have a question for him?
The question that you asked yesterday: how is giving this guy a vote is going to benefit the Afro-American community?
Oh, great question. Thank you, Leonard. So the question that I asked yesterday, Mr. Johnson, is specifically to the African American community. If folks go and push a lever for you, what will be the return on that effort for the African American community?
Well, a big part of my work over many decades has been around social justice. And so I have fought for voting rights across the country. Within this state, I have made sure when I was working through the issues of racial profiling by state troopers or police community relations after the Garner decision and after Ferguson exploded, I have a very strong track record of working for social justice. And if you vote for me and I end up in the governor's office, you will have a governor who doesn't just talk the talk, but I actually walk the talk on social justice issues. My platform is very clear about dealing with inequality, and I believe that our cities can be real engines for pushing the state forward. But my approach is a little bit different from what others do. The talk is about investing in business or maybe investing in buildings. I want to make the investments in people. I don't want to be a governor that simply says, okay, we're going to build up Newark, build up Trenton, just by bringing businesses in, instead of investing in the people that are already there. In Newark alone, it is a tragic fact that of all the jobs that are being generated in Newark, only 18 or so % are held by the people who actually live in Newark, and we need to turn that around.
All right, we got another caller. Okay, caller, you're online. This is the Eric Dawson Radio Show. Please turn your radio down, and you're on live with gubernatorial candidate Democrat Jim Johnson.
Okay, just another question. I got disconnected. My grandbaby mother yesterday overdosed off of prescription drugs. I shared that to your page, Eric. We want to know also, what are we going to do about this? And she was only 25, mind you. But what are we going to do about this prescription drug problem that we're having in this state?
I'm sorry, Eric. I didn't fully hear the question.
Oh, Leonard, repeat your question.
My granddaughter mother OD yesterday. She was only 25 years old. What are we going to do about this prescription drug problem that we are having in the state?
I am so sorry to hear that. It is in the state and the country, the levels of people dying for overdoses is actually rising, not climbing. And so one of the things, there are a handful of things that I would want to do. One, by legalizing marijuana, but also making very much more expanded use of marijuana, you can have people prescribed for pain medication, drugs that are not as toxic as opioids that are used. Two, we need to make treatment much more broadly available in case of overdose, but also long-term treatment to reverse addiction. Those are some of the things that we can and need to do in connection with this crisis of overuse of prescriptions. And there are the other thing is this: the doctors themselves have to be much more closely monitored, and they need to do better monitoring of who has the prescriptions, how much of the medication they actually need and have been using, so that we're not in a circumstance which is kind of like what happened with me. I ended up not having a problem, but I had a ruptured Achilles. I had surgery. I was given Percocet and much more than I needed. And had I continued with the prescription, it might have gotten a little bit too good to me over time. And so we need to make sure that we're prescribing only what is needed, and we're providing alternatives that are not addictive as soon as we can.
Good morning, Mr. Johnson. This is Rashon Hasan, former chairman of the North Board of Education. You pointed out that we need to have strong commitments for pre-K programming here in the state of New Jersey. So I'd just like to know from your perspective what you believe needs to be done in order for us to remedy the funding challenges that we're experiencing in our education landscape here in the state of New Jersey.
So I'll start with, we do have big funding challenges. The school funding formula has been underfunded by about $1 billion for each of the last 7 years. We need to work to reverse that, and I want to do that. But also, I would change the way some parts of the formula are put together, particularly on the funding of pre-K. I believe that high-quality pre-K is really essential for all children, but children that are facing some of the most severe challenges, it is really a necessity. I worked as a volunteer in a Head Start program starting about 4 years ago, and I worked for about 3 years as a volunteer in the program. And I could see firsthand the difference that quality pre-K can make in helping a child be prepared for the next level, which is kindergarten, and making that transition. I think that those opportunities should be broadly shared, and I would be working for that.
So another question.
The other part of your question is, and the other part of your question is, I think at least you didn't say it out front, but it's something that I understood from what you were saying, is we have in New Jersey a budget mess. And the next governor is going to have very tough issues to deal with. I think that our budgets reflect our values, and I would put a high value on making sure that the opportunities are given, particularly to the young people who have some of the biggest challenges in the state.
So I don't understand this question. So Yusef, you should call in and ask it yourself. So we do have another question, another caller. Go ahead, let's take this call.
Good morning, caller.
Hey, how you doing, my brothers? Peace and good morning to you. This is Al Montgomery. I'm a retired custodian from the school system. I just want to know what about his ideals for funding school buildings. Some of these buildings is in terrible shape, and I think a lot about the state pension also. So my question to him is about the structure of the school buildings and the state pension. And you brothers take it easy.
Thank you for the call.
That question, it gets to what we are prepared to invest in. In many of our schools across the state, we have, whether it's in Camden, in Trenton, we have a classic old building that is it's been reported to me is in tremendous disrepair. We need to work to restore buildings where they can be restored or replace them where they have to be replaced. The school construction fund has not been well managed, and as governor, I would have to take a look at how we can better fund the school buildings across the state, because it hasn't worked. And I believe when I last checked in, which is now a couple of months ago, the fund for school construction was down to about $175 million. And I don't think it has been replenished since that time. So we've got some work to do on that score. And then on the pensions, I have said, because it's very important to me, that those who have paid in and who have kept their promise and commitments to the state ought to be able to rely on the state to keep its commitment. But for those that are going to be new coming into the system, we're going to have to have some hard conversations, because the current system has become unsustainable, and it is tremendously underfunded, and that's why we've had 11 credit downgrades in the state, and so we're going to have to work through that.
So, Mr. Johnson, we have another question from one of our listeners on Facebook. Will Hathaway asks, what are your thoughts about early voting in New Jersey?
I think that part of my platform is actually focused on ethics and democracy reform, and one of the issues that we address is the voting process, the way the ballot is designed. One of the callers was asked about line A. I'm actually on line D for democracy in Essex County, and I think the ballot should be redesigned so it's clear to voters that no one is telling them who to vote for, and they have to actually work through rather than making automatic choices. So on the other front, I think we should make it much easier for people, first, to register to vote, and secondly, to cast their votes. So at least early voting the weekend before voting and before the election day, those 4-day period, I think that would be a very good thing. We've seen a situation in Montana where their new facts came out about a candidate close to election day. This was the case where the Republican candidate had actually shoved a reporter, which may have had an impact on voters, but they had already voted before that information came out. So there are some risks to early voting. But the other thing is this: because people can mail in their ballots, we do have a form of early voting already. We just need to strike the right balance.
So, on the educational front, there are a number of school districts that are currently under state intervention, Newark being one. We just had a guest, a current school board member from Jersey City who joined us about a week ago. Just wanted to know, if you are elected as governor, how do you plan to address the state's intervention in school districts such as Patterson, Jersey City, and Newark?
Well, in all of those school districts, the state intervention hasn't worked very well. But more importantly than just whether or not it's worked or not right, I believe that communities ought to be invested and empowered to help develop the educational policy and the management of schools in their communities. And so my view as governor is that we need to be engaged with communities. We need to empower them to be involved in the educational process and project for our young people. I have seen communities around the country who have been able to be aligned, not all within the school system, to support the education of the young. And that means that leaders have brought in, say, barbershop owners and medical professionals, religious institutions, and libraries, and helped develop community-wide campaigns to make sure that children are able to read by the end of third grade. That's very important, and it relates to issues like the school-to-jail pipeline, because if a child between, say, pre-K and third grade, at the end of third grade, they are learning to read. After fourth grade, when they start fourth grade, they're reading to learn. And if they haven't gotten to the point where they actually can read well and with deep understanding before they start fourth grade, then they start to fall behind. And many of the young people who end up getting locked up, when you look at that set of young people, many of the problems started because they weren't able to read. So my view is let's get ahead of that. Community-based programs to do that also helps deal with the whole set of issues facing a child, such as access to housing. All of these have an impact on the ability of a young person to learn. It's a long way of answering your questions, but essentially this. I want to get to a place where communities are much more engaged in the process, that the state is not taking control away from them, and that there's much more of a partnership between Trenton and the communities around the state to help make better educational lives for our children.
So I want to remind the people and people who are just tuning in, we're on live with gubernatorial candidate Democrat Jim Johnson. So for a lot of you guys who said you didn't know him, and I want to say this too, I did reach out to all of the candidates, all 11 of them, and the only one that responded was Jim Johnson. And so we do have him here live on air. So for those of you who said you did not know him, we're trying to figure out who to vote for. We have him on the line. If you have a question, you can call in 973-457-8000. So I did hear you talk about marijuana, legalizing marijuana for I guess not just for the purposes of being able to prescribe a pain medication, right? But are you talking about legalizing it for a recreational use as well?
Yes, Eric. One of the things that, and getting back to some of the core issues of my platform, on criminal justice reform, I believe that many of the crimes that are on the books are outdated, and they aren't necessarily being enforced in a fair way. So black and brown young people are prosecuted for marijuana possession at higher rates, much higher rates, than their white friends or their white peers. And if we want to get our arms around the disparities in outcomes in our criminal justice system in the state, we have to address that. Part of the way I would address that is by legalizing marijuana. It would also have a consequence if we legalize it and tax it, of perhaps generating up to $300 million in tax revenue that we definitely need. So yes, I would legalize it for recreational use, and my reason for doing that is a little bit different from some of the other candidates. I start from a justice frame, a justice consideration, and the benefits to our state treasury are just one part of that.
Excellent. So, Rashon was talking to you, but I just got to let you know how I feel about this, about local control, which is looming. And are you saying that if you were elected governor, you would evaluate the things and you would return local control back to Newark?
Yeah, that would definitely be the goal. Absolutely. We obviously, when we're making any sort of transition, it has to be a considered process. But that should be the goal, and I believe that I would be able to work with the mayor and with the Board of Ed to make that a success.
Excellent. I guess, and if you have any other questions, the phones have stopped ringing. Folks are tuning in, though, and listening. If there are things that you feel that you have not expressed to the electorate that you'd like to express, I'll give you the moment to do that.
Absolutely, and thank you for this opportunity to speak directly to people. I am fourth generation in my family to have been raised in this state, and I'm raising it with my two daughters, the fifth generation of the family to be here. In my generation, I was just marching with one of my cousins in the Bayonne parade last week for Memorial Day. In my generation, she and I were talking about, we have, I count 48 cousins. She says we may have a handful more. Most of us are in our mid-50s or older, and those of us who have survived. But I lost many cousins along the way, and it informs my view, my perspective about the inequality. I've been able to achieve certain things in life, and I'm able to come before people and run for governor because of the opportunities that were given to me. And when I look across my family members, I see very clearly that those same opportunities were not shared. And as I come into this race, and we have 9.5 hours, 9 hours and 15 minutes before the polls close, people should understand that I want to be a governor for all people. But my perspective is informed by my experience of life in this state and seeing how our communities have suffered because our democracy is not healthy. So we can make it healthy if we vote. So please get out and vote. And I hope if you're in Essex County, you vote line D, which is where you'll find me. And in different parts of the state, I actually am on line A. I'm on line A in 7 counties in the state, and I need your vote.
Now how'd you work that out?
You push. I pushed for it. I hired a law firm that wrote to every single county clerk, insisted on a process that's required in our law. That is a fair process where you hold a lottery for all of the candidates, and that determines where people get placed on the ballot. And as a result of that, I ended up on line A in 7 counties.
So I do want to ask you one more question. One of the things that Mr. Murphy is talking about is this bank. Can you explain from your perspective this idea the idea that he says is that it would be right now our money goes into a bank, into a bunch of other banks, and then the money goes out of our community, and then we get a small return on that money by way of interest. But the idea of bringing this bank, having it be our bank, and then we, put the, whether it's the school budget money in it and the municipal money in it, that we could then give small business loans to businesses in the community to spur economic growth.
Yeah. Yes, Mr. Murphy and I have debated a little bit at the debate, but otherwise about the bank. I don't think it's a good idea, and here's why. We have a government that can't get the trains to run on time, can't get the schools built, and can't pay our pensions. And it's not because we don't have a bank. It is because we don't have good oversight over the government organizations that we already have control over. If we don't have a tradition of good oversight, and I worked in the Treasury Department, so we used to talk about safety and soundness around bank management and oversight. The last thing you want to do is give Trenton more authority over more money. We do need to oversee where the money is being deposited, and whether or not it's being run, say, by hedge funds and we're paying high fees. But the idea of putting Trenton in charge of all of those directly in charge of a bank without changing the culture in Trenton is, to me, a recipe for disaster. And I've opposed it and would continue to. But the other thing, even if, say, we had a different kind of culture in Trenton, there's only one state that actually has tried this, which is North Dakota. And the governor of North Dakota, which has a very different economy from New Jersey, has said that he wouldn't recommend it for New Jersey. A state with a similar economy to ours, Massachusetts, has considered the idea of a bank and said no, it's not a good way to go forward. And so I would oppose it for even if we could get our culture in Trenton right, it's not the right thing for New Jersey's economy.
Got it.
I have one last question before you go, Mr. Johnson. If you were elected to serve as the next governor of the state of New Jersey, how would you interact and engage with this White House administration under the leadership of current President Donald Trump?
You know, it depends on the issues. 3 weeks ago, I put out what I call the Trump Protection Plan, which would oppose President Trump and his administration in areas of criminal justice, in areas of immigration, on health issues, on environmental issues, on issues that are essential for families, like raising the living wage to $15 an hour. So on those issues, I would want to make sure New Jersey's people and our values are protected, and that means making sure our laws are right and tight, and making sure that where we must, we do go to courts to defend our state against what the Trump administration is trying to do. You know, that said, there may be opportunities on infrastructure where we can work together, and governors have to do that. I'm a strong believer of you pick your spots, and I've laid out the spots that I think that are important to defend, and there are areas where we're going to have to work together, or at least try to.
All right. Well, Mr. Johnson, I want to thank you. I wish you well on the campaign trail. And listen, if you are successful, because I think that this platform is important, and I think that our elected officials being able to have these kinds of candid conversations with the electorate are important and can be a part of mending, right, the divide between Trenton or government and the everyday folk on the street. And so I would ask you that if you are successful in your bid to become governor, that you would consider visiting us frequently and having these candid conversations with the listeners.
Absolutely, and I won't just do it on the phone. I want to be physically present with folks. I was in a barbershop in Camden yesterday morning on Haddon Avenue yesterday afternoon, and I was doing a lot more listening than talking, and the ideas that were there were terrific, and they should inform whoever is making policy going forward. That's what is going to make this state better. If we take all of the talent, however it is, whoever has it in this state, and we try to tap that potential and not get hung up on sort of what position people have in life, because there is wisdom everywhere. You know, I'm really lucky in that when I was a kid, my grandfather, who was an associate minister at Wells Cathedral in Newark, I sang in storefront churches, and my mom's a church organist, so we sang in churches all over the place, and I know church basements really well. But because of opportunities that were given to me, I also have been able to walk off of Air Force One behind the President of the United States. And I know that there is wisdom in both places, and I have learned that there's often a lot more wisdom that comes from people who are close in to the problems that face us than people who are 10,000, 20,000 feet away. And I want to tap that wisdom and bring it to Trenton.
All right. So listen, we have 4 minutes before we go to our 11 o'clock break. We just got one more question in, and the question was, do you support Trump's pullout from the Paris deal?
No, I oppose it, and I did a short video on that that's on my Facebook page. I think that his decision was reckless, and that it dishonors the commitments that were made by President Obama on behalf of this entire nation. And as governor, I would join with other governors to form an alliance to combat the impact of Trump's reckless decision.
Well, thank you very much for the call. Good luck on the campaign trail. I'll see you on the other side.
Thank you very much.
Best of luck to you.
See you on the flip side.
All right. Bye. So, listen, that was gubernatorial candidate Jim. Rashon, do you agree that it would have been a cool thing to have all 11 of them call in? We would have had to give them a little less time than we gave Mr. Johnson, but then the people would have been able to listen.
Absolutely. And, you know, I'm really grateful for this platform that we're building here, because I believe over time, individuals will really start to recognize and appreciate the value of this voice that we're building for the community. You know, I think that when individuals are considering, stepping into leadership, elected office, etc., there are certain things that need to be done. There are certain people that you need to address. And the people that these elected officials and leaders tend to address most often are the people that want to have meetings behind closed doors and not the public. You know, those everyday people that are out here on the grind, getting up, working, trying to figure out how to make ends meet, but at the same time are really looking for an opportunity to support someone who's aligned with their needs and their interests. So, you know, salute to Mr. Johnson for coming through and answering some questions from our community members today.
But here's the thing, and I'm going to tell you listeners this. They only come because when I sat and talked to him, I told him what our listenership was, right? How engaged they are, how informed they are, right? He said, he's been on the show before, but you got to understand today's election day. So me pulling him off for an hour, right, of campaigning on election day was pretty huge.
Yeah, it is.
I want you really, guys, I really want you to understand that. So he said, I'm going to do it. And he did it because he realized the number of people that he would be able to get his message out to this morning. You guys play a part in the growth of and the importance of the show by not only listening to it, but please by sharing it and by talking about it. And then finally by engaging. That's the only way that we're going to get these elected officials to engage with us, is if we push back in large numbers.
Yeah. And, you know, let's get back to the original question. You know, we started off this morning talking about how much information we knew about candidates and what information we received via mail or what kind of posters, flyers we saw up in our communities. And, you know, when anybody says that they're running a grassroots campaign, right, but the only thing, you know, the only interaction that we're hearing, we're getting from those individuals are when they have posters up in our communities or mailers are being sent out. That's not in my opinion, that's not really a grassroots campaign. You know, I think the grassroots campaign is one that's built from the ground up. It has the support from the community members, those individuals that are close to are closest to the issues at hand. And it's not one that's filled with money, whether it's your own personal money or whether it's money that comes from donors, large donors, etc. It's one that's built by the people. And I think we haven't had one of those in a long time. And I really believe it's time for us as a community to really step up and say, you know what, we're going to build this thing up from the ground, right? We're going to build the platform and the apparatus, and then we are going to put a candidate inside of this platform or this mechanism that we've built, as opposed to it being the other way around, where the candidate comes and says, hey, I'm going to be your savior for your community. Can you build something around me to help me be your savior? You know, there's no self-appointed leadership. You know, it has to be individuals that we fully support and that we believe in, and not people who are just pushing themselves on us and on our communities. We're going into our first break, so we will continue with our message when we return.
The current time, Radio 94.3, reggae, dance hall, soca, hip hop and R&B, African, disco, oldies but goodies.
Hi, this is Janet Jackson.
We're bridging the gap. Seriously. Splash Radio 94.3 New Jersey.
Are you looking for real Jamaican cooking? Look no further than the real, authentic, and bona fide spot in Newark, New Jersey. Stars Pressure Pot Restaurant at 347 Sanford Avenue, serving the best curry goat, oxtail, steamed fish, jerk curry, fried, and brown stew chicken. Call today, 973-350-6657. There's always a special at Stars Pressure Pot Restaurant. Stew Beef Tuesdays, Stew Beef Wednesday, Cowfoot Thursdays, Seafood and Fish Fry Fridays, Saturdays, it's Portland Jamaica style jerky, you name it. Stars Pressure Pot Restaurant is open every day, Monday to Thursday, 8 a.m. to 9 p.m., Friday and Saturdays till 10 p.m. And check out early Sundays, noon to midnight with all your favorite games. There's a live broadcast every Sunday at Stars Pressure Pot Restaurant with all your favorite DJs. Catering and delivery, call today, 973-350-6657, or check them on the web at starspressurepot.restaurant.com. It's always a good day at Stars Pressure Pot Restaurant.
We know that when it comes to your vehicle maintenance, you've got a lot of options. In fact, with so many options, it can be challenging sometimes to find a reliable and affordable auto mechanic. But that's where we come in, Belmont Motor Works, with a commitment to providing our customers with honest, quality service at reasonable prices. Belmont Motor Works has one of the most modern, state-of-the-art automotive service and repair facility in the entire state of New Jersey. Our technology, education, and expertise will provide you with the best car care service imaginable. For an appointment, dial 973-268-8199. Right now, get a check engine light diagnostic, an oil change or tune-up, brakes, or just a performance upgrade. Belmont Motor Works got it covered. We're your one-stop shop, the European specialist, specializing in BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Range Rover, and all luxury and high-performance vehicles. 973-268-8199. We also install engines, transmissions, starters, alternators, timing belts, water pumps, and so much more. Trust the trusted Belmont Motor Works, conveniently located at 531 Central Avenue in Newark, New Jersey, and find us on the web at www.belmontmotorworks.com.
Well, I don't know, so Mr. J represent for 94.3 FM Splash Radio. We don't splash out the music on them.
So I don't know why my whenever I go to play my
the
drop, it doesn't play. So oh well.
You know what it's probably saying, let's make a new drop.
Let's make a new drop. I think it's time, man. You know, tomorrow's the anniversary.
Yeah, man. Congratulations.
It's been 1 year, man. 1 year.
Salute.
You know, and I think that one of the best things that has happened is bringing you on, bringing Kevin on, having Ian be a part of it. I know Judge T and Rosalind were here. I mean, I've been going through all of the people that have contributed and that have said that they want to, play a bigger role in helping this grow. So I'm excited about it, man, because it's really, I'm gonna tell you, it's really not the Eric Dawson radio show. It really is the community show, and and I think that the diversity of guests, topics, callers, and co-hosts demonstrates that it really is the community show.
Yeah, and I think what we also provide is a balance when we're here. We're discussing the issues. It's not a fluffy show where we're just nodding our heads to everything that the other person says. Like, there are times we definitely don't agree on things, but we're committed to the overall mission of improving our community and making sure that the voice of our communities are heard. So again, huge shout out to you, E, and the work you're doing. Next year, this time, we'll be celebrating year 2.
Amen. And and I hope that it grows. So listen, so you guys know this is the goal. The goal is, we started off as a 1 hour show. Mm-hmm. And then the content built up, and literally we were like trying to squeeze 2 hours into 1 hour, and we couldn't do it, so we had to expand it to a 2-hour show. Well, we're in talks here at the station about in August having it be a 3-hour show. And then now that becomes incredibly huge. And then there'll be an outreach to the community, to faith-based people, to elected leadership that really wants to make a difference. And then we will, I think, be in a position, to push back on all of the, all opposers out there, man.
Yeah, and what's really important, I think, about this platform is that the end goal is for us to impact change. Mm-hmm. We believe that change, it happens by being committed to an issue and being committed to taking whatever actions you need to, as long as they're not unethical and they don't violate any moral codes and they're not illegal. But, we're in support of taking the actions that, the community members want to take in order to drive change. And oftentimes, that change happens just by having dialogue and presenting the facts. So, I've been thinking a lot about the conversation we had last week about the Newark Board of Education and Leah Owens being removed from her position as chair of the Program and Instruction Committee. And you and I have talked. We've heard that chairman of the board, Marquise Lewis, has since reinstated Miss Owens as the chair of the Program and Instruction Committee. And really have to thank members of the community for calling in, for sharing information via Facebook, etc., so that we can do what was in the best interest of the community. Right? I checked the website earlier. Nothing's been posted on the website highlighting the committee chairpersons for the 2017-2018 school year. But I do look forward to seeing that, and hopefully we'll get a sound verification on that pretty soon. But again, we looked at the facts. We had a robust conversation and dialogue that didn't just involve us here in the studio, but it involved the community. And I think that's what's important. When we have conversations about driving accountability, those conversations can't just happen between 2, 3, or 4 people. It has to happen amongst the community at large if we're really serious about holding individuals accountable for what they've committed to do for us.
I agree, and I think that maybe small chunks. Maybe setting goals. Right? So community goals. So we had a goal, and that goal was to get the most qualified person on that committee, chairing that committee, and we accomplished that goal. So we need to look maybe and say, let's look broadly at our community and let's establish some, really attainable goals. Nothing too lofty, but things that are high impact and are easily attainable, so that we can start chalking up wins.
Yeah. But let's refine that a bit, and let's add SMART goals. Okay. Right? Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. Because when we create, oftentimes we hear individuals, especially on the campaign trail, right? They have these goals, and I talked about this during the Newark Board of Education election this year. Everybody comes to the table with these high-level goals, right? They are not measurable. Most often, they don't have any time associated with them, and sometimes they're unrealistic based off of what that candidate will be able to do once he or she becomes elected to office. And we all know that in the political arena, nobody wants to be caught in a space where they've committed to something, and then when someone comes to them 6 months later and say, hey, what about that new building you promised to build for us? You guys haven't even broke ground on it. They don't want to be put in a position where you can hold them accountable to what they set as a goal, which is why I believe they don't set SMART goals, meaning that they aren't very specific, they aren't measurable, right?
Now, wait a minute, are you talking about politicians' goals?
I'm talking about politicians' goals.
No, I'm talking about...
Let me finish. And the reason I'm saying this is because we have to, as a community, differentiate ourselves from them. That's why I said our goals need to be SMART goals, because we need to take reins and we need to show them how they should be establishing goals and how they should
Are
be.
you talking about micromanaging the government?
What I'm talking about is us stepping out here and being the example. Meaning that if we go out and we establish SMART goals, what we do now is we say, hey, we've made these goals measurable. We also made them timely. We've made them realistic. And now that we've put this out here, let's say the goal is for us as the radio station, for us to grow to a 3-hour segment each day by September of this year. Guess what? We put that out there. Now our listeners, they have an opportunity to drive some accountability to us now, because they can come back to us if we don't accomplish that and say, hey, what happened to that, guys? You guys told us that was going to happen by this time. So as a community, we collectively now start making those goals. Not only are we able to hold ourselves accountable and track our progress, but for those individuals that are monitoring what we're doing, they can also help drive some accountability. That's what I mean by that. And I'm not saying that, forget how the elected what they're doing in that regards right now, but as a community, I think we can really lead and show. So now we start establishing those SMART goals. When we get those flyers in our community that don't have SMART goals, we're like, what is this? Because our community goals are measurable, they're specific, they're timely, and now I think that will help us to start demanding those things from individuals who try to come in our space and say, I want your vote. So it helps us drive accountability amongst ourselves as a community, but then it's also going to help teach community members how they should look at, internalize, and criticize the goals when elected officials are coming through with these BS flyers, with these high goals that aren't specific and they aren't measurable.
Okay. No, I got that. But, and I think that's great. What I'm referring to is goal 1. And you all, look, I don't want to just pronounce goals. I want you all to be a part of joining this conversation and saying this should be a goal and that should be a goal and we should consider this as a goal. But here's my goal number 1 for this upcoming election in our municipalities, in particular our urban municipalities that have for decades been abused by candidates and political figures. No more signs on our polls. Let's make that a goal. That's what I'm saying. Can we make that a goal? Can we all collectively say that it makes our community look like crap, that it's illegal, and that they won't do it anywhere else? They don't do it in Milburn. They don't do it in Maplewood. They don't do it in Livingston or Short Hills. They don't do it in Hillside. They do it in Newark. They do it in East Orange. They do it in Orange. They do it in Irvington. Can we say that we deserve to have our neighborhoods, our communities, look as nice as those communities look during election season? Why do we have to be dumped on as a community? Because I want you to be clear and understand this. These politicians know what they should and shouldn't do, but they do what they're allowed to get away with. Can we set a goal of loving ourselves and loving our community just a little bit more and say to them, we won't tolerate this abuse anymore? Can we set that goal?
Let's do it.
Right? And so if you all think that this is a good goal, right, then it's easy. It's very easy to move forward with it. Start a petition, take the petition down to the council meetings, present it, say this is what the community will no longer tolerate, and I'll tell you why they will listen. Because if they recognize that them doing it anyway will offend voters, then they won't do it. But if they understand that you don't give a damn, that, they can kick you in the back, and they can violate the law, and you'll still go out and vote for them, or at least you won't vote against them, then there's no impetus for them to change. So I'd like to make that a goal.
All right, so we're gonna get this petition started.
I'm gonna start the petition today.
All right, enough said.
And then we're gonna see. So now the first thing we have, guys, is we'll have the gubernatorial race, right? And again, just go up into West Orange and look at those other neighborhoods. They've been successful in running political campaigns. So you don't need to litter the polls with flyers and posters to win a campaign.
What you need to do is get out and talk to the members of the community. That's it. So I think a part of why we see the signs up in our community is also the fact that individuals aren't coming into the trenches to talk to the community members. It's easier for them to just do a drive-by and litter up our community and put posters on poles and,
I'm saying that they don't care about poor people.
Yeah.
They don't care about poor people.
And they don't care enough about poor people to even get out of their damn cars to knock on your door and have a conversation with you.
Let's take this call. Hello, caller?
Yes.
Yep, you're on the air.
Oh, wow. I guess there's a little bit of delay with the streaming then.
Is this my brother Cameron Cox?
Yes, it is, sir. Yes, it is.
Oh, good morning, brother. Happy to have you calling to us this morning. Cameron Cox, candidate for second and third.
Yeah, councilman at large for the city of Plainfield for the second and third wards, which is the southern portion of Plainfield.
Hey, Cameron, let me ask you a question, because we were talking about putting posters on poles. Do you guys do that in Plainfield?
That is exactly what prompted me. I was like, I know you guys had a little bit of a break with Mr. Johnson calling in, but when you guys started talking about that, I just had to call in because I think one of the sad realities in some of the urban areas, and we do have that issue in Plainfield, is the fact that of the uneducated voter. So I agree with Rashon in the sense that there are not candidates or potential servant leaders that are coming into the trenches, into the different neighborhoods. So they feel like, if I just place a lawn sign, if I just hang a poster, then you lull the voter to sleep in the sense that, since these posters are everywhere, this must be who we have to vote for.
So in that regards, are you saying that the uneducated voters are more concerned with the better marketing as opposed to the qualifications and leadership of the candidates?
I really do think that is the case sometimes. And calling them uneducated voters, I don't want to let that be derivative of their level of education, but it's just oftentimes by the way, and Mr. Johnson spoke on it as well, they play the games and the tricks with the balloting and who's pushed in what areas and who's not pushed. I mean, the fact that Mr. Johnson was able to get on line A in 7 of the counties is huge, because you're literally lulling voters to sleep with putting, especially in Plainfield, right? So let me go off the Union County slate. There's this proposed column A team, and then in normal elections past, if there were 2 or 3 other candidates, it would be column B, column C. It would be easier for your marketing. You almost encourage people to be lazy because they put the quote-unquote column A team down A, and then everybody, no matter what office you're running for, is in column G in Plainfield.
Wow. So, when we talk in, when we look at national elections, like the presidential election that just occurred, and there was all this screaming and hollering in the black community about how down south they were suppressing the vote, they were manipulating the elections and all of those kinds of things. These things are happening in black communities, right? And a lot of times by black leadership.
I believe so. Yeah. I mean, one of the sad things that I was informed of, and it's all over Facebook now, the current mayor decided to hire random people from cities in and around Plainfield to wear his shirts, to hang up his signs, to be poll challengers for a neighborhood they know nothing about.
And when people confronted him and asked him, like, I understand you may need to get the day work, you have to make your money how you can, but do you understand some of the things that this individual is doing? And they're like, I never knew nothing about him until today, and I bet you I won't be here next year. So, I mean, it's just sometimes our own leaders fail us, oftentimes fail the ones that they are claiming to serve so diligently.
Well, because it's really not about, and I contend that it's not about the improvement of the community. It's about selfish gain. I mean, and it's about retaining and controlling power and not sharing it. And it's about all those things. And that's why in a lot of these communities now, where there used to be white leadership, we have black leadership, and black folk are not treated any differently. They're not treated any better as a result of black leadership being there. But like you said, they've been lulled to sleep into believing that somehow that black person who looks a little bit like them is giving them the best that they can. And I just think that it's a shame.
Very much so.
So, Cam, this morning I had an opportunity to read an article, or blog rather, from
I read that
post from Dave Rutherford with the PlainfieldView.com, and I have to say that.
Well, read the headline, and then I'm gonna post that on in this thread so people can check it out.
Yeah, the headline is Map Administration Top Cop. You saw what I did to Kenny Reed, according to lawsuit, and this is stating that top cop under Mayor Adrian Maps in his administration was recorded as saying this to someone. You saw what I did to Kenny Reed. Kenny Reed was a African American, one of the top police officers, from my understanding, serving the Plainfield community, who was ousted or forced to retire because of some politics out there in the city of Plainfield. And now, according to this article, these same things are now taking place, and the person that's being targeted now is the current Plainfield fire chief, Mr. Frank Tidwell.
Correct. So, not to speak on any of the specifics, but Kenny Reed was forced out after, I believe, 31 or 32 years of service to the Plainfield Police Division. The way the fire division and the police division, they comprise the Department of Public Safety for the city of Plainfield, and we're not like some other municipalities where we have a police director. We no longer, the city council years ago abolished the position of police chief, so we don't have a police chief. We have our director of public safety, and the director of public safety oversees the police division and oversees the fire chief, which we still have on the books. And it boils down to pure bullying tactics and political backlash. So if you want to support someone else that's not currently in power, once that person renews their power or gains more, then you have them coming after you, in a sense that they want to try to take your livelihood and your ability to feed your family, which I think is completely inappropriate.
So, Cam, you have some experience law enforcement. You're a retired Rutgers police officer. We've had some conversations about the violence and public safety issues in the city of Plainfield. How do you intend to remedy these issues that are impacting your community if you are elected to serve as councilman at large for the 2nd and 3rd wards?
So when I'm elected to serve as councilman at large for the 2nd and 3rd wards, I don't only want to just engage the 2nd and 3rd wards. I want to engage the entire city of Plainfield, because I think I bring an interesting dynamic of being young enough that I can relate to the newer generation, but old enough and more educated enough to the point where I can sit down and be respected by the older generation. And with that said, I plan on, upon being elected, maintaining the operation of town hall meetings so that the dialogue is constantly open and the engagement is always there. We need to be less reactionary and more proactionary. And in doing so, we allow to know what our community truly needs instead of impacting, or instead of forcing, oh, this is what my community needs, and passing city ordinances that may not even be beneficial to the community that we're allegedly serving.
So, what are the biggest differences between you and whoever your opponents are? I don't know much about what's going on in Plainfield, but so for the listeners, so that they can see that, you know, where there may be differences.
Okay, so I began this whole campaign that I don't do smears, I don't do who's right, who's wrong. I just tell you who I am. And one of the issues that I've always had when I look at the landscape of the city council is there's a city council person assigned to being the liaison / overseer of public safety in the city. But we haven't had a person on the city council that has a public safety or a public safety practitioner on the council in 30 or 40 years. So how can you have something as integral where you need actual technical knowledge? How can you have an individual oversee public safety or be the liaison for public safety for the city council, which makes legislation controlling how public safety is operated in the city, if they themselves are not a public safety practitioner? It's just, it doesn't work. You wouldn't have a doctor, you wouldn't have a doctor necessarily be your mechanic, and you wouldn't necessarily have a mechanic be your surgeon general. So, for certain elements, you need that practical knowledge to be able to be successful in the carrying out or the commissioning of that duty.
Now, this is the issue that we continue to see time and time again. Is this not what we just went through?
It's just what we went through.
We just went through this in Newark with the Board of Education, having the individual who was actually qualified, right? The only person with a teacher certification and a principal supervisory certificate in the state of New Jersey, to who was on that board, actually got removed from a program and instruction committee chairperson position. So we see this happening time and time again, and I'm happy to hear that this is something that you're looking to address, in the city of Plainfield. Back in the end of 2016, you lost a good friend who was an activist in the community, and I had the opportunity to listen to you speak on another radio show when you talked about your interaction with your friend and how his passing actually led you to step up and run for this office. Could you share a little bit of that story with us?
Yes, most definitely. First of all, I want to say, Shamar Coleman, you're always with me, my brother. I'm down here trying to do what I can do to fulfill some of those conversations we had on many a nights. A friend and brother, Shamar Coleman, who was very integral and always trying to do for, he didn't have his own kids, but he always tried to do for his nephews, his nieces, the kids in the neighborhood. He would put on barbecues. He would do an Easter egg hunt every year that actually was turned into a memorial Easter egg hunt this year. And one of the things he always told me, he was saying, Cam, you're just similar how I said, Cam, you're young enough that the quote-unquote youngsters in the neighborhood, you can relate to them and they'll talk to you. But you're old enough and you've done your due diligence and going to get further education and you had good work experience that the quote-unquote powers that be have to listen to you when you talk. So with that said, when he was unfortunately taken from us on December 29th, I was really messed up for about a month or two. All those conversations of him pushing me to run for something. He was like, run for school board, run for city council, do something to serve your community to help these kids out so that we can have an adequate voice, not just a voice who's elected to manipulate or to monopolize power, but someone who actually cares about affecting actual change. And it just got to the point where it was around that time where you really needed to stipulate whether you were running or not, and I just made that decision to go ahead and run. If for nothing else, to bring to light all the nonsense that is happening in Plainfield. And again, I'm not saying that I'll have all the answers on the council, but I just like to point out, you go back to this marketing of the Line A party, right? So the Line A party is doing a great job because they have a lot of money to throw at this campaign, marketing themselves. But one of the things they're sticking on is how they are reducing not only crime in the city of Plainfield, but violent crime. And I find that very offensive because indirectly I'm a victim of these violent crimes that are occurring. And I never claim to be a numbers man, right? I never claim to be our mayor as a CPA. I don't claim to be a numbers man in that regard. But I do know a little bit about crime stat and ComStat. There's no way that if in your first year administration, 2014, you have 3 murders, and in your second year, 2015, you have 4 murders, and in your third full year, in 2016, you have 12 murders, and you still stipulate that violent crime is down 30%. There's just no way those numbers add up.
So not only can they count, but they don't have any integrity either.
Exactly.
Wow. So what is the voter participation in elections in Plainfield?
Generally, on the year, you get more voters when the mayor is up or the council person at large is up. So this year, the mayor, this primary will be for the mayor. So generally, you'll get about there's about 16,000 or so, 17,000 or so registered voters. Registered Democrats in the city of Plainfield. They say we're less than 50,000, but Plainfield's population is probably accurately somewhere around 70,000. But the powers that be have a vested interest in keeping that number under 50,000, but that's another topic. But the turnout is generally about 4,500, give or take, for a primary, for a Democratic primary.
Wow. And what kind of work have you been doing? What kind of groundwork have you been doing on your campaign to give yourself a real opportunity to beat Line A there in Plainfield?
And I heard Rashon speak on it. I'm really just doing as many grassroots projects as I can. I mean, everything that I've done my entire life living in the city of Plainfield, I've just tried to amplify that so that those that I may have not impacted or come across can see the true intentions of my heart. And if it's the will of the citizens and residents of the 2nd and 3rd Ward, they will elect me as their next council person at large.
All right, man. Well, listen, and the election is today, or it's today.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and polls close what time?
PM.
Excellent. Well, I wish you well, man. Like I said to Mr. Johnson when he was on, win or lose. I think that you have some valuable things to offer to our listenership, and what we intend to grow, beyond Essex County into Union County and beyond. So I would love to, invite you to be a partner in joining us to spread information. I think that that's the key to power.
Listen, information is definitely power, and win, lose, or draw, like I said, I've at least exposed some of the wrongs with the processes in Plainfield directly, and I will be more than willing to come on the show again and offer up any expertise that I may have on any of the topics that you discuss on the given.
Hey man, and well, show. Listen. If you come here, it's not about you, weighing in on the topics that I choose to discuss. It's you sitting down and saying, "Yo, brother, we need to talk about this." Okay, good. Good luck. Good luck, brother.
Appreciate you having me.
All right, bye.
Bye. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
So listen, man, our family is growing.
Definitely.
Plainfield to Perth Amboy to Jersey City.
Next thing you know, we're gonna be down the shore this summer.
We're gonna be down the shore this summer, man. But this is what it's about.
Absolutely. And this is good because this is real coalition building. And again, we're doing it authentically. It's happening organically. It's not happening because we're paying people. It's not happening because we're offering anybody anything or we're making deals. But, we recognize when individuals have a legitimate voice and they have something to offer to our community. And those are the people that we want to continue to highlight and build our relationships with and rebuild our communities with.
Well, see, here's the issue that, as I see it, Rashon. There are a lot of talented folks who have been snuffed out in our community simply because they pose a threat to the political establishment, right? And so by silencing them, the folks who are in power don't have to share power, and they can continue pimping mediocrity or failure in our community. The other piece is, for me, being very, very careful about the people who you engage with in this battle. And make no mistake about it, it is a fight. A lot of folks want to jump on board because all they want to do is big up themselves so they can run back to the big house, tell Massa that they have some information or that they impotent. And then from that impotence, right, or the information, they want to trade that up for a bigger room in the big house. Do you understand? So I'm very leery of some of the folks, man. You know, there have been people who have called and said, hey, man, you know, I want to come on the show and, you know, I want to, and then realize as soon as you have a little bit of a conversation with them, it's about them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's not about the community. It's not about what they have to offer. It's about them and them being able to pop their suspenders and talk about how important they are.
Listen, forget the big house. Create your own damn house. That's what we're focused on. And the community is our house, and we are working very diligently to make this thing happen and to rebuild our community and to expand this platform so that our community has a voice and has say in what's going on and how things are going to impact them as we move forward.
So Sister Sherry says, and she says, we're the Angela Davises, the Stokely Carmichaels, the Hugh P. Newtons. Those are the types we need in the community. They're there. Yeah. And then Yusuf says, and you're right, he says they exist, we just don't support them.
Yeah, it's true.
We don't support them. When they come out, we watch. You know what we do? We watch them.
Yeah, we watch them get their ass kicked. That's what we do.
You know what? I'm gonna tell you who was one, Sister Sherry. I'm gonna tell you who was one. My father was one. He was one. But there were so many people who just watched from the sidelines. And what they would do is say, go, Carl, go slay the dragon. And he would go out and he'd try to slay the dragon. They wouldn't come and join him. Mm-hmm. They wouldn't pick up the shield or the sword or anything. They would sit and watch him. And then when he came back wounded, they say, wow, he tried. Then another dragon would come. They say, go, Carl, go slay the dragon. And then he would go out and try to slay the dragon again. Until you're prepared to pick up arms and go out with the people, then you wind up with what you wind up with. You'll have folks who will try, but it's like a pebble in an ocean, right? Mm-hmm. The ripple's not that great.
Yeah.
You know, but we need to form and become a boulder that gets dropped on that thing. Then we can make real change.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So there it is, Sister Sherry.
Yeah. And you know, I would add that we can't be afraid to support people. This whole notion of the silent majority, I think, is complete BS. If you are the majority, then step out. Like we're in this mindset of supporting people just because they're standing. Look, just because you're standing doesn't mean that you're standing for something, right? We need people who are out here who genuinely are standing for something, and those are the people that we need to support. Point blank, period. There's no way around it. There's no way around it.
Look, you want to talk about support, and this is real simple. Sometimes we do shows, we have 800 views on Facebook, right, or whatever we wind up having. Then I look at the number of people who share. Mm-hmm. Just something as simple as sharing it, right? Saying, you know what, I'm going to take ownership. You know, these guys are committed, me, Rashon, Ian, and other people who have come on the show. We're committed to be here every day from 10 to 12, right? And if some of you looked and said, you know what, the commitment that I can make is a small one, but I'll be committed to making sure that I share every episode, to make sure that as many people as are on my page can have access to this information, because these guys are willing to put it on the line every day from 10 to 12. But you're looking, you see 3 shares, you got 4 shares. So again, Sister Sherry, and I'm answering your question. People are willing to sit. So there are folks, they tell me, man, when the show comes on, I get my popcorn, I get my whatever, and I watch. Don't need you watching. Need you engaged.
Yeah.
See, this is exactly it. engaged. And here, the engagement is real simple. Just literally hit share on the button. But it is symptomatic of what is plaguing our community. That you have people who step up, but you have no support for them once they do. You know, and look, here's the other piece. And I'll tell you, and I got this from my father too. I was so blessed to have him as a dad. Our community, we complain about the leaders that we get, but we're not willing to make an investment in new leadership. That's right, I said it. We're not willing to make an investment in new leadership. I'm going to ask all of you, when you complain about the leaders we have, how many of you have anteed up $10 or $20 for a campaign? How many of you guys went to a table and put $50 in the middle of the table and then built a pile of that money and went and found somebody that you can go and support? See, so we're not willing to do any of that. None of it. You know, but we'll watch somebody else put money in the middle of the table, right? We'll watch other people go and select a candidate, and then we want to, and we've put no skin in it. We have no skin in the game at all. And we want to sit and direct what that person should now do.
Yeah. And the reason we need to be focusing on young leadership, I think it's two reasons. One, you know, young folks are, to a certain extent, they're not all of them, but some are hungry. They have the skill set. They have the energy to go out here and move mountains and to get things done. And we need to be the group of people that provides them with the wisdom, the knowledge, and the understanding to get those things done and to help move us forward as a community. The other part is that there is a huge disconnect in terms of having equal representation when you don't have young leadership that are in these positions. I'm 33, right? So I'm 32, about to turn 33. So I'm not old, right? I'm not pushing. Yeah, that's how to pull that one back.
Yeah, man.
Wake up tomorrow like, oh, your birthday's here. So, you know, I feel that when I look at local leadership, a person who's serving in the community and they're in their, you know, upper 60s and 70s, that's like 3 generations away from me. That doesn't mean that the person doesn't have, you know, like skill set, or they don't have qualities. But my needs and my interests are much different than that person. Mm-hmm. So if I don't have someone who's in that space who's aligned with my needs and my interests as a young African American man who has a family, who believes in entrepreneurship, who wants to grow his business, who wants to have great schools for his son, who wants to have safe neighborhoods so his wife can walk to wherever she wants, if she wants to go to the park, if she wants to go to the supermarket. If there's no one in these positions that are aligned with me philosophically and support my ideology, what the hell am I going out here and voting for other people who are so far removed from my personal beliefs for?
But then what do you do?
Well, if you don't have someone in those positions, then I think individuals like me, right? And I'm not, and I can't remove myself from these conversations, when we talk about people not willing to take up the mantle and take up the torch and do what needs to be done for the community. Because if I'm going to say that other people have to be willing to step up and lead the community, then I have to hold myself to the same level of standards. And I can't remove myself from that conversation. So I will say that in that regards, if no one's there that fits the mold, then I need to put myself in that position so that there's equal representation.
Listen, today is election day. A huge election in New Jersey. We bitched and complained about Chris Christie for 8 years. We saw black leadership march Chris Christie into the black community 4 years ago. They showed us no consideration by doing that. They did it out of pure selfishness. That black leadership marched Chris Christie. I want you to remember that. They marched him into our black communities and they told us that he was the best thing for us. Black leadership elected and selected. There were pastors and preachers and mayors and council folk alike. There were assembly folks and freeholders smiling and grinning on stage with him. They had the same color skin as us. None of those people have yet apologized to the black community for doing that. And we complain, and we suffered through those 4 years. Now we have an opportunity. And my fear, brother, is that that opportunity is going to slip through our hands. I put a post up today, and I said, because people say, oh, I'm going to vote for this one. I'm going to vote for that one. I'm going to vote for this one. I said, you know what? Because I like to give these little mind benders. I said, votes don't win elections, right? Organized voting wins elections. Let's be clear. Votes. So when you go out there, and we talked about this, when you go out there and say, I'm going to go cast my vote, it's like pissing in the wind. Your single vote, gone. It vanishes. It is only when your vote is tied. What's that African proverb? It says one stick is easily broken, but a bundle, right, stands for. See, when your vote is tied to other votes, right? So that's why they talk about the black vote, and they talk about the Hispanic vote, and they talk about the LGBTQ vote. And see, when they talk about the white women vote, when they break them into these categories, these groups, those votes, because those people now, they lobby for things. Where's your vote? What category did when you went out and voted? See, that's what I'm saying. So when you went and voted, what category did your vote get put into? Right? Pissing in the wind.
Well, truth be told, you talk about this all the time.
All the time,
in the black
brother.
community, most of those individuals put their vote in the free chicken dinner column.
Yeah,
because that's what they get. That's what they get. Lure you in with the free dinners.
That's
hey,
crazy.
we giving you meals, and that's it. That's all a candidate can do. First of all, as a man and woman, you need to be able to stand up on your own 2 feet and feed yourself first and foremost, and stop walking around with your hand out looking for somebody else to do the things that you're supposed to do. I'm tired of hearing the complaints about there are no jobs. Guess what? There's no job. Get your ass up and create one. That's what everybody else is doing.
Listen, remember I told you I gave people an opportunity to make money. Do you remember my job? Were you here when I told Kevin my job or my entrepreneurial opportunity for people? And they, nobody took me up on it because I literally did. I drove down to the DMV and I didn't see anybody capitalize on it. So I guess it wasn't worth it for them.
Yeah.
They could be making a lot of money right now if they listen to that idea.
Well, listen, we still need to push forward, and if other folks don't want to take advantage of the opportunity, then we can, right? We're smart brothers, we can make it happen. We have
no. Listen, I went and created a website, and I'm having an app built. So more people can do it. And then the more people you have do it, then the competition is really weeded out by customer service and good business planning and those kinds of things. But to give the opportunity, or the idea rather, to people, I didn't have a problem with it. But I went and secured a website. I have an app developer working on the app for me, and we've got a logo now. We have some T-shirts printed up. I'm moving.
Listen, man, folks gotta. One of the best things I've learned that in my young life is to pay myself first. And to be honest with you, for a long time I really didn't know what it really meant, right? On the surface, it's like, oh, are you telling me when I get my paycheck, don't pay my bills first? Like, go do what I want to do for myself. Like, what does that really mean? And for those folks who are listening and who really haven't had an opportunity to kind of scratch the surface to understand what that means is you need to focus on building business and stop focus on being the employee. Because when you are the employee, you will never be paid first. And the reason you will never be paid first is because there's someone called Uncle Sam who's there to collect his fair share before you touch any dime, any penny that goes into your paycheck, your weekly or your bi-weekly earnings. However, as business owners, we are paid first, and then Uncle Sam is paid. They don't come and they don't jump and take taxes from businesses and then leave the rest to the business owners. That's not how that works. But for us in the working class, if we are only focused on being employees, we will never have the opportunity to pay ourselves first, we will continue to be in the rat race, and we will never find a way out of this financial mayhem that so many people find themselves in. So, E, we got about 10 minutes left.
What you want to talk about?
We had a couple of articles, man, that we shared, and I wanted to take a moment to really talk about this discipline, school discipline piece, and what's going on. And I believe it's New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
This is happening in the K to 12 space in New Orleans, and in New Orleans, what they're doing is they're dealing with the trauma that students are experiencing, post-traumatic stress syndrome. They're dealing with all of these things and trying to help educate or heal the whole child, as opposed to administering discipline to them.
So they're not suspending the kid for 45 days like they did at their school in Newark, right?
Absolutely not. And we continue to have these conversations about this on the show, because this right here is the first step in creating a school to prison pipeline. The data and the research that we've provided on these shows, it indicates, one, that the more student is suspended from school, the more likely they are to drop out of school. We also introduced some data that states that 75% of all inmates in the United States prison system are high school dropouts. You suspend our black and brown children, and as a result, they drop out. And as a result of them dropping out of school, they do not have the skill sets, they do not have the qualifications to go out here and get jobs. And even if they do have the drive or the hunger, when they go and they fill out the job application and it shows that they don't have any kind of education, if their job application is even considered, it goes at the bottom of the pile. They can't feed themselves, they can't feed their families, and what do? In turn, they engage in criminal activity, and as a result, they are arrested, and then they again become slaves to the system, and that continues to feed and fuel this school to prison pipeline. And that's why we should be outraged as a community, particularly in our urban environments, because we don't have any black leaders who are talking about this school discipline issue that we are experiencing in our public schools. We're having this issue in our charter schools, because charter schools, a lot of charter schools have the zero tolerance policies, and they are in fact suspending students at a rate that's 2.5 times higher than our traditional public schools. So we need, as a community, we need to really start talking about restorative justice. We need to talk about dismantling these out of whack suspension policies, because we're doing more harm than good to our children.
So here's something very, very interesting, right? It says the teachers at this school, it said teachers in general rather, look at at this school, looking through a different lens. Instead of looking at what's wrong with this child,
why is it happening,
they say, what happened to this child? Like, I want you to understand that. Now, what's wrong with this child? So you see a child act out, and you say, what's wrong with him? What's wrong with you? Right? We hear that, right? What's wrong with you? Think about if you just changed the words and said, what happened to you?
Or listen.
My goodness.
I see that you might be having a bad day. You're making some. Why are you making these outbursts? Like,
yeah.
What was it that happened that caused you to? And that right there says it all. That means that in the classrooms and in these schools that we're not asking the critical questions that our children need to be asked.
Can you imagine the difference? I would challenge teachers and other people to ask that question differently, right? When you encounter a child who is misbehaving, instead of saying, what's wrong with you?
But see, in order to do that, you have to care.
Yeah.
Right? And so for those who don't know, I'm enrolled in the educational management and policy program at Seton Hall University. And I just wrapped up this course. This is my last weekend in this course. And it was focused on ethical decision making as school leaders. And it talks about the course really walked us through these 4 paradigms. One being the ethic of the profession, the other being the ethic of justice, and then the ethic of care and critique. And we had a guest speaker come in, and she talked about, this ethic of critique and making sure that you have this element of care when you are a school leader, when you are a teacher, etc. And then she broke something down for us. She said, oftentimes people talk about caring. They say they care. She said, but there has to be a progression where you go from caring about to caring for, right? So caring about is, oh man, there was just a disaster, that happened in this part of the world, and Red Cross is looking for donations. I care about that cause, so I'm gonna donate $20 to it. But when you're in a classroom and your children have these issues, one, you not only have to care about them as individuals, but now that is established, you have to figure out how to show these young people that you care for them.
But that's training,
right?
Right. But that's training,
exactly,
right? And not only is it training, but it's making sure. I think that we talked about this before, that the teachers that we have in the schools are culturally in tuned, right, with our communities and our children. Here it also talks about a meditative room, right? But now there's some costs involved, because they said that they have 2 social workers to work through with these kids. So it's not punitive. It's not punishment if a kid is disruptive. They send them to what they call a wellness center for meditative timeout. And they allow them to reflect, and they allow them to write poetry. But when we're having these conversations, right, about policies that will cut funding and those kinds of things, when we look at something like this at this school, and I posted it in the thread, all of it is interconnected. So when people say, like, I don't do politics, well, politics determine whether you have the resources to have this.
Exactly. And so let's jump back to that piece of, the students having that opportunity to meditate. So, let's focus on other outlets and alternatives for our kids, right? We need to be able to expose them to things like yoga, which I think is essential and should be a part of the curriculum at every school. I also believe, and I've stated this on the show before, when a student is suspended, or if there's any kind of disciplinary action that a student needs to face, or if you have students that are acting out, I believe that they have to have mandatory sessions with social workers or therapists inside of the school setting, because by taking these punitive actions against students, you are not getting to the root cause of the issue. In fact, you're now ostracizing the child. When we look at what placing a person in prison actually does to a community, it leaves a void, because every person in the community has a role. I don't care who that person is, they have a role and they are important to someone in the community. So when you remove them, right, that person now leaves a void. Think about that in the context of removing a child from schools for 2 weeks because you suspended them. That just left a void in that school community. That kid might not be the best student in the classroom, but guess what? Rashon knows Eric so well that when Eric comes to school and Eric is having experiencing challenges at home because Rashon and Eric grew up together, Rashon is the person in the classroom that can calm Eric down.
Wow. And
keep him focused when he's in the classroom. Now I'm going for 2 weeks, because I got suspended, and now you just
that disrupts my whole
right, because something just happened at home and you came to school and I'm not there. to talk to you and calm you down, and we don't realize that our students play these vital roles inside of the school community. So, I mean, there's a lot that we continuously have to unpack with this, and we have to start making our schools places of healing for our children. We have to start dealing with this trauma. You know, we hear about the gun violence and all of these things that are happening in our community. Where do our kids go to really talk through these issues?
Yeah.
Right? They should be able to do that in school, because guess what? That's where they're spending the most of their time.
Well, listen, like I said, man, we got to expand to 3 hours. 2 hours went too fast.
Yeah. Time
Listen,
flies when you're having fun.
This is Eric.
And this is Rashon.
And we are out.
Peace.
This has been the Eric
good afternoon.
Dawson Radio Show.
It's not just about Eric's opinion.
I use up all of my brain. Oh, come on.
I don't know how much
I don't even sleep. Scientists have discovered that women's and men's brain function somewhat differently. Men tend to use, you see? They never see this, you know? Men tend to use only one side of their brain at a time when focused on a task, devoting all of their concentration and attention to the task at hand. On the other hand, women tend to use both sides of their brain at the same time, making them adept at multitasking.
You see, it simple means y'all overthink.
Where that gentleman going? I can't leave him, I leave.
It simply means that y'all overthink too much.
No.
As simple as that.
No.
Yeah, of course. Y'all overthink too much.
No, we don't.
Y'all use both sides of the